Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media, and this hour of news and views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. And in a bit, we'll be speaking to Advocate Stephanie Fick, the Executive Director of the Accountability and Public Governance Division at OUTA. The recent revelations about South Africa's costly new driver's license and card machines, which will cost over 1 billion rand for just three machines, have sparked a nationwide debate on whether it's time to move away from analog license cards and vehicle discs towards a more digital system. Many have questioned the transparency of the tender process and the true need for these expensive machines, especially when digital alternatives seem more feasible and cost effective. And joining us here to unpack this further is Advocate Stephanie Fick, Executive Director of the Accountability and Public Governance Division at OUTA, who have welcomed the investigation and called for the greater scrutiny into how public funds are being used in this procurement process. Advocate Fick, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
It's always a pleasure joining you guys.
I think first and foremost, what is OUTA's main concern regarding the procurement process of these driving license card machines? And do you believe that South African service providers were adequately considered when handing out essentially these tenders?
Yeah, we were a bit concerned. The information we received and talking to some of the other tenderers, it does appear that there was some irregularities when this tender was eventually awarded to EDEMIA, and that's why we asked the minister to before we continue, please do an investigation. So it all started with information we received, and what we've uncovered is that, for example, the way the bid adjudication committee and the bid evaluation committee did their duties boils down to a little bit of irregularity. So you will, normally there's quite a number of bidders and there's functionality. You look at, will these bidders be able to do whatever they say they will do? And then there's, you have to look at the price. Now, the initially when the tender was advertised, and it's a long process because actually before the tender was advertised, they went out and said, but what are the technology out there? How much is it going to cost? Who is interested, etc. So the bid was advertised, and then you do your bid. And if you look, for example, at all the bidders at the bid evaluation stage, we received two documents with different pricing, and it appears that the company that ended up being the only sort of standing tenderer was EDEMIA. And excuse me. When we heard that DLCA or this tender was awarded to EDEMIA, it was also in the news that they were just let go after they got a tender at AXA because of tender irregularities. In fact, I think it was their chief financial officer was put on suspension because of some misconduct that happened, and EDEMIA lost that tender. So all these questions, but to come back to the bid adjudication and bid evaluation committees, is that in these two documents, it appears that the amounts that this tender bid for was more than the initial amount this tender was advertised for. So you're talking about, and please don't keep me to the numbers, but it was like 495, but the numbers, million for this tender. But what EDEMIA tendered was, on the one document, it says 700,000, 700 million, and on the other one, 800 million. So, and they were the only one left standing. And if you talk to the tenderers, it appears that in the process, they were disqualified because, they didn't give some information. Certain documents were left out. And they said, but no, we did. So on the surface, it appears that that they went out of their way to make sure that EDEMIA got this tender, and it also appears that they got it, the tender, for more than the DLCA or then the Department of Transport initially thought they would get the money for. So although it's a very complicated process, it is supposed to be fair, transparent, etc. That's what our constitutions say, and it seems that it didn't happen in this instance. Maybe just the last point is that when, for example, DLCA went out on tender, they need permission and they have to have the budget for the amount that they tender for. It just makes sense. And the increased amounts were not part of that budget. So it all seems, it just doesn't make sense. And the dots are not connected in this instance.
I think just one question before I let you go. What steps should the government now can or should take to ensure that the licensing system is both cost effective and beneficial to road safety? And would a shift to a more digital license solve many of the current problems, or are there other reforms that should be prioritized?
I hope I can answer this as quickly as possible. Let me just start off by saying, when we advocated for the renewal period of driver's license cards to be extended from 5 to 10 years. Eventually, government did research and said that it appears that the government can consider 8 years. And then there was this whole turnaround by the previous minister, Chikunga, that said that now, because of communicable diseases, we're not going to do that. We tried to find that research. According to the department, that research doesn't exist. So that to us was linked maybe to this procurement of the new driver's license card machine, and that government realized that maybe they're not going to make as much money from this if they extend the validity period of the driver's license card. I don't know, if you look at the research, whether a totally digital solution will work in South Africa. I can tell you that internationally, these types of solutions, the driver's license card solution, is something that they use. Some countries are just, it's 10 years. There's even countries with 20 years. And it really depends on, the country. You can't go out and have a solution that is not fit for purpose. That's not fit for South Africans. I think the solution is that government now definitely has to investigate this award of the tender to Edemia before they sign, service level agreements and all of that. And this is costing the country way more than it should. Government should seriously consider extending the validity of these cards to 8-10 years to make it easier. They must go look at their administrative processes. I mean, I am not against, for example, digitizing this process, that you don't have to go stand in a queue for your driver's license card. I mean, that doesn't need to happen. Why do we have to go every 5 years, stand in a queue, and you can't complain about the service, because in certain instances there are none. I have to say, in some centers, apparently you get lovely service, but in others you don't. And it wastes time. That's why South Africans are getting frustrated with the whole process. So although I think that there is a way that we can digitize the process, whether we will get rid of the card, not so sure. We must understand that this card, although the current card, in terms of the South African development, it is in line, but not with the international standards, because it's used as an ID. So therefore, we need to look at new cards, because it can be used as an ID. I think in future, when we have sort of eradicated corruption, or at least minimized corruption, government is a bit more efficient in their processes, I am sure that we can look at a totally digital process. But for now, I mean, prioritize road safety, because I think everybody will agree with me that the carnage on our roads is unacceptable. Get more, police that can police our streets and our roads. Can we have less potholes?
Hopefully.
Local governments look at their spending so that they can spend their money, where it's needed, and that is potholes. Just the condition of our roads. I mean, SANRAL is looking after our national roads quite well, but our provincial and local roads, and you're not going to solve the whole holistic problem if you don't look at all the steps in this process, in my
All
view.
right. I think we're going to leave it there, Stephanie. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate it. And always a pleasure chatting to you.
It's a pleasure. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
You too. That was Executive Director Director of the Accountability and Public Governance Division at OUTA, Advocate Stephanie Fick, answering the question: is it time South Africa ditches driving licenses and vehicle discs in favor of expiration-free digital permits? And that doesn't seem like it's going to be happening anytime soon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be discussing bullying. More on that after this.